I'm 40, a head chef in a city that treats restaurants like seasons, one always ending, another already trending. My place lives on a corner that glows warm in photos, plants in the window, candles in little glasses, a chalkboard with handwriting that looks casual and took 3 drafts. Inside the kitchen it's stainless, scorch marks, and the sound I chased since I was a kid, oil applauding a pan, the printer rat-tat-tatting orders, cooks answering, "Heard, chef," in a chorus that makes my shoulders drop into the groove. I clock in early because the morning quiet is the only quiet I get. I taste the chicken just before it cools, balance it with lemon until it stops sulking. I call the fish guy. I tell the new prep hand to cut chives thinner. Like confetti we actually want at the party. I move through it like I know where everything lives because I put most of it there. Sometimes I stand at the pass and watch the dining room before service, empty chairs, folded napkins, 100 small promises, and tell myself not to get precious. Then the printer fires and the day stops being about me. If you're here for revenge, you'll get it, but it isn't bloody or loud. It's a note on a bill and a room holding its breath. It's the soft kind that tastes like relief more than triumph. The only way it lands is if you know the spice blend under it all. The years the word stupid sat on my chest like a pan lid you can't get off. My parents used it on my cooking like some people use salt, automatically, constantly, without thinking if it belongs. I loved food early and hard. I was 10 the first time I burned onions on purpose to see what bitterness tasted like and learned patience was the only antidote. I was the weird kid who brought homemade granola to school and traded it for Cheetos. I was the teenager who asked for a microplane for Christmas and got socks. Home was tidy, practical, and suspicious of anything that took too long. My dad liked schedules and lawns that looked like haircuts. My mom could make a serviceable casserole and a point at the same time. I'd finish homework and go straight to the kitchen, spin an egg in a pan and try to catch it without breaking the yolk. I'd watch cooking shows with the volume low, copy the way a chef's knife rocked when it was doing work for someone who trusted their hand. "Stop wasting time," my dad would say, walking through the kitchen like the smoke was a personal insult. "You smell like grease. Cooking is a nice hobby," my mom would add, like she was setting a napkin carefully next to a plate. "Don't make your life hard." Stupid, they said. Stupid to spend money on flour. Stupid to watch videos of men in white jackets deboning fish. Stupid to think you could be one of them. I kept cooking anyway, because my body was convinced in ways my brain didn't have words for yet. Food is attention made edible. I learned you could fix almost anything with the right kind of acid. I learned a squeeze of lemon at the end could make a mess taste like a choice. I learned it felt truer than the other thing I was supposed to want: a suit, a desk, a job title that sounded like a door closing behind you. At 17, I made dinner one night: salmon with crispy skin, smashed potatoes with too much chive, a salad that wore its dressing instead of drowning in it, and watched my dad wipe his plate with bread and say, "Now that's food," in a way that made me brave enough to say it out loud. "I want to be a chef." The room did that blue glow thing TVs do at night when nobody's speaking. My dad laughed once, a sound like a fork tapping a glass wrong. "Don't be stupid," he said. My mom didn't laugh. She softened the blow by patting it with concern. "Chefs work nights and weekends. It's not a life. You're smart. Do something normal." I pictured normal, and it felt like wearing someone else's shoes. I pictured a white jacket, and it felt like skin. "I'll work hard," I said, but the volume was already up on the game show. Conversation over. If this were the neat kind of post, that's where a switch flips. Mine didn't. I just stopped narrating my dream out loud. I saved tips from the diner where I bus tables. I watched videos in the glow of my phone under a blanket. I played with spices the way other kids played with guitar pedals. I kept making dinners and swallowing the amusement in my dad's eyes when I talk about blanching green beans. It wasn't a phase. It was a direction. The night I left, I folded 2 jackets, one for weather, one for kitchens, and put my knife, cheap, soft steel, sharpened on a stone I couldn't afford yet, in a cardboard sleeve. My friend drove me to the city because he had a car and the kind of faith that looks like a shrug. I told my parents I'd be back in a few weeks. I wasn't lying exactly. I just didn't know what to call the stretch of time I was about to step into. For a while they called. "Where are you sleeping? How long is this program? When do you come home and start something real?" There's a voicemail I never deleted where my dad says, "When you're done with this phase, call me." The way he said phase like it was a weather system passing through me and not a climate I was choosing. I chose anyway. I chose dishwashing and prep and burns that pattern your wrists like a map. I chose the weird courage it takes to care about a plate someone will ruin with a fork in 20 seconds. I chose the kind of tired that takes your name off your face and leaves what you can do with your hands. I chose the thing they called stupid because it made the world make sense. That's who I am now, the guy at the pass who can tell if a steak is medium rare by the way the tongs bounce, and who will push a plate back if the chives are sloppy. The man who salts like a memory, acids like a wake-up call, and keeps a lemon in his pocket on busy nights because it makes me feel lucky. The son who walked away and accidentally built the kind of room his parents would one day walk into as regulars without knowing. We'll get to that night. First, the smoke and steel that got me here, and the word I couldn't forget, turned to something I could live with. I grew up in a house where dinner was punctual but forgettable. Protein, starch, vegetable, all obedient. If anything had a crust, it was accidental. We had rules. Don't talk back. Don't waste food. Don't try to be fancy when company comes. Normal was the seasoning that went on everything. I wasn't unhappy. I was itchy. My hands needed a project. I'd peel carrots into long ribbons and watch them curl in a glass of ice water like they were relieved. I'd toast spices in a dry pan and stand over them, eyes closed, waiting for the moment their smell turned from dull to alive. I'd read cookbooks like stories. The margins of our joy of cooking have my handwriting in pencil, secret notes. More lemon, salt earlier, don't tell Mom this has anchovy. The first time I blew the family's mind, I was 14 and a Food Network host taught me how to properly brown mushrooms instead of steaming them into rubber. I used a pan big enough that the mushrooms weren't crowded, left them alone until they squeaked, and finished with butter and thyme. My mom said, "Oh," and then quickly, "Not too salty," which was her way of keeping her balance. Most nights I'd get the opposite reaction. My dad would fork through a plate and find the thing he didn't like. "Too sour," he'd say if I used vinegar the way a recipe asked. "Too spicy," if I had the nerve to cook with more than black pepper. "Stop making weird food," if I put a fried egg on anything that wasn't breakfast. "Stupid," when I asked for money to buy saffron after an article told me it would change my life. I bought turmeric instead, learned it stains everything, including disappointments. School didn't fix the itch. I did okay, good at English, okay at math, tolerable at pretending to like group projects. I ran track because a coach saw me outrun a bell once and offered validation in the shape of a uniform. My dad liked the meats. They were measurable. Cooking wasn't. There's no scoreboard for a perfect sear, no trophy for restraint. My wins were private, a stock that set into a fatless jiggle, a vinaigrette that made a grocery store tomato show off. Senior year, I started working weekends at a diner to get close to heat. If you've never stood in front of a flat-top griddle at 7 a.m. on a Saturday while 9 tables chant for pancakes, you've never felt a room trying to eat you. I learned to move, to pull bacon right before crisp so carryover finishes the job, to avoid the evil eye of the waitress who's on her 7th coffee and doesn't believe in teenagers. The cook there, forearm tattoo of a dragon that faded into a smudge, let me flip eggs when he'd step outside to smoke. "Don't break the yolks," he'd say, like a dare. I broke a lot. Then fewer. At home, I floated the idea of culinary school. I'd done the research, programs, costs, a timeline that made sense if you squinted and ignored reality. I waited for a neutral moment. I made dinner first, safe food, no anchovies, nothing to argue with. I picked my tone carefully. "I'm thinking about culinary school," I said like I was talking about the weather. Maybe the program downtown. You're kidding, my dad said. He had this way of smiling when he was disappointed, like he was saving face for both of us. You'll spend 4 years learning to chop onions? That's not a career. That's for people who don't have other options. My mom tried to fold it into concern. You'll be up late, on your feet, holidays, no stability. You're smart. Don't make your life hard on purpose. I didn't say. It's hard either way. I didn't say. Your version of easy feels like erasing myself. I said, I'll work hard. And my dad reached for the remote, the universal period to any sentence he didn't want to hear the rest of. Conversation over. That night, I microwaved leftover green beans and ate them cold in the glow of the fridge. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, the way most real decisions are. I started collecting small exits, extra shifts at the diner, cash in an envelope hidden under socks, research on apartments that didn't care about your credit score if you could bring a deposit in bills. I watched a video of a chef peeling grapefruit segments clean, no pith, and did it until my fingers were raw, not for a dish, but because precision makes me feel like myself. I told one person, my best friend, the only person who didn't roll their eyes when I described the way garlic changes if you slice it instead of mince it. He said, I'll drive. Like the script had already been rehearsed. He didn't try to fix it or warn me. He had an old Civic, Faith and blunt instruments, and a glove box full of fast food napkins I still find in my drawers sometimes. The morning I left, my parents weren't home, my dad at work early, my mom at the gym. I left a note written like a receipt, I'm okay. I'm going to the city. I have a job lined up. I'll call. Love me. I took my jackets, my cheap knife, my weird spice collection, and the cutting board my uncle made me in shop class that bowed in the middle no matter how I flipped it. I sat in the Civic with my stomach doing flips, watched my house get smaller in the rearview, and felt that brand new kind of fear that's mostly hunger. We hit the city and the volume went up on everything, sirens, steam, the kind of sidewalk arguments that sound like sports commentary. I checked into a room that was technically a living room and paid cash to a guy who said, no parties, like there was room for one. I found my way to a restaurant with a help wanted sign and told the manager I would do anything. He looked me up and down, handed me an apron and said, Dish pit. 10 an hour. If you leave mid-shift, don't come back. I didn't leave. For weeks, my world was racks and steam and the rhythm of door down, door up, plates too hot to handle and then somehow not hot enough. I went home soaked, hands smelling like lemon and bleach, pockets full of wet receipts. It wasn't glamorous. It was exactly what I wanted, proximity. My parents called. Come home, my dad said in the first week. Get your prerequisites out of the way. You're being dramatic. It's not a phase, I said. Everything's a phase, he answered, and I saved the voicemail without hitting play again. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I wanted proficiency. I wanted to be the kind of person who can stand in a kitchen and make decisions when 10 tickets drop at once. I wanted to learn the grammar so I could write sentences that tasted like something I meant. I enrolled in a night program I could afford if I ignored math about rent, knife skills, stocks, sanitation, the dry parts that are actually the bones. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who thought Brunoise was a show of respect and mise en place wasn't pretentious. I wasn't right at home, but I was close. I could see it from where I was standing, a life where I wasn't a disappointment for wanting to feed people on purpose. Kitchens don't welcome you. They haze you by existing. The dish pit teaches speed before pride. The line teaches humility after both. By the end of my first month, I'd memorized the rhythm of the brunch place: coffee at 6:45, first ticket by 7:05, a flood by 8:15 that didn't let up until noon. The cook would slide a hotel pan of bacon at me and say, "Brittle, don't screw it up." I would lay strips like I was dealing cards to a table that could ruin my life. The smell followed me home and I didn't wash my jacket because I liked it. The first time a cook let me touch a knife on the clock, he handed me a crate of herbs and said, "Pick the leaves." Faster. That word became a metronome. Faster. 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 I learned that better comes later, after you earn the space to be careful. I learned that heard is the only answer that keeps the machine moving. I learned how to stay out of everyone's way and still be useful. I learned how to read a cook's mood by the way he salted his eggs. Careless meant fight. Precise meant he was trying not to. At night I took classes. I loved the parts other students rolled their eyes at, the exactness of knife work, the geometry of bones in a chicken, the way a hollandaise will forgive you if you whisper to it with heat. An instructor said, "My sans place is a love letter to your future self." And I wrote it down because it felt like someone had named the instinct I'd been calling living on the edge of disaster. I bought a railstone and bent over my cheap knife like prayer until I could shave hair with it, and understood why people say dull knives are dangerous. The scar on my left thumb says, also, sharp knives are dangerous if you're dumb. Life outside the kitchen narrowed. I shared an apartment with 3 other people who worked nights. We owned 4 chairs and no boundaries. I dated a server who said she liked that I was driven, and then realized driven means absent, and found someone who made it home by 8. I ate staff meal like it was a gift, and took home ends of bread to make toast with anchovies and lemon because anything can be dinner if it has salt and fat and acid in the right places. My parents and I fought on the phone like people stepping on a rake over and over. "How long is this class? When are you getting a degree?" "It's a certificate," I'd say, and my dad would sigh like the word circus. My mom would say, "Your cousin Jimmy just got promoted," as if her tone didn't make it into a measuring stick. I tried to be kind and failed. We drifted. I sent texts on holidays and called when I could afford 20 minutes of their disapproval without it ruining my shift. A sous chef noticed me one night after a table of 12 ordered 8 different omelets with substitutions and I didn't cry. "You didn't get rattled," he said, like a compliment and a test. "I felt rattled," I admitted. "Feeling it isn't the same as showing it," he said. "Be here at 5. I'll teach you grill. Don't tell anyone." I showed up at 4. He showed me how the hot spots move through a grill like weather. "Don't fight it, follow it," he said. "Medium rare isn't a number. It's a feeling. Pull it before you think. Trust carryover." He threw me on a Friday. I went home floating. The next day I slept through my alarm and got written up. Kitchens give and they take a cut. I got promoted to prep cook at a small bistro where the chef could mince a shallot so fine it made me angry. He put me beside him and corrected my salt with a grunt. More. Enough. Taste. Again. He taught me to season all the way through, not just on top. He finished a muddy stew with lemon and watched me watch it wake up. "You add what's missing," he said. "Not more of what's already there." I still hear him when I get cocky and overbutter a sauce to hide my own boredom. There were nights I thought I could stop. I could go home, apologize, get a job with a lanyard, stop smelling like garlic for a living. But then there'd be a moment, the way a steak talks back to you when you turn it, the way a pan goes quiet when you've finally evaporated all the wrong water, the way a guest sends back an empty plate with that look that says, "I didn't know cabbage could do that." Those moments felt like messages from a future where I belong. You don't get an official document that says, "You are now a cook." You get small, stupid ceremonies. The first time the chef tosses you his own knife and says, "Run the pass while I take a call." The first time the dishwasher calls you, "Chef," as a joke and then forgets to laugh. The first time a server asks for you by name to fix a steak because the table trusts you. Those add up until suddenly you're the one people look at when the printer jams and the tickets spill onto the floor and someone needs to decide whether to 86 the chicken or send a runner to steal from the place next door. I remember the exact day I felt legitimate. It was a Thursday in early spring. We were understaffed, overbooked, and down a burner. The chef put me at the pass and said, "Keep it moving." I called fires. I kept eyes on the window. I said, No, again. Without apologizing for it. The food landed hot and correct. The dining room hummed. After, the chef handed me a beer and didn't say much. You don't need words when the room itself has given you permission. I went home to my bed on the floor and let myself say the thing in the dark without flinching. Head chef. Not someday. Not fantasy. A job I could reach if I kept going. I didn't think about my parents. Or I did, but not in the way I always had. Their word, stupid, had started to lose its stick. It was still there, like an old adhesive you can't scrub off a glass. But I had heat, knives, and a reason to keep showing up. That glue doesn't hold forever if you keep moving. I slept like a person who'd finally found the rhythm that matched his own pulse. In the morning I sharpened. Then I went to work. Then I kept going. Culinary school at night is a strange club, ambitious, exhausted, full of people who can brunoise an onion and forget to pay their electric bill. I loved it. Not the debt math, not the part where your shoes never fully dry, but the shared language. We'd gather around a stockpot like parishioners. We'd debate the meaning of to taste. We'd burn our fingerprints on sheet pans and call it tuition. My favorite class was sauces, because it turned chaos into systems. Bechamel isn't romantic, but it's an engine. Hollandaise is fragile, but it teaches you how to keep something alive with patience and attention. I made so much mayonnaise my roommate staged an intervention. You can't emulsify your feelings, the pastry student said, which was both fair and deeply wrong. I started keeping a notebook not just of recipes but of results. How long it took onions to collapse into sweetness at medium-low, how anchovy disappears into a background hum if you melt it into oil first, how much lemon is enough, more than you think, less than you want if you grew up in a house afraid of sour. I wrote down sentences my instructors tossed off like they were obvious. Salt early so it goes inside, fat carries flavor, acid introduces it, heat makes them talk. The best one wasn't about food at all. Discipline lets you be kind later. On the line, that means tight prep means you can help the guy drowning next to you. In life, it's everything. My first real mentor didn't like speech. He liked results. He had a buzzing tattoo that read like a correction. Less. He could cook fish with the calm of a person assembling a chair. He salted decisively, plated like a person who hates fuss but loves intention. He put me on guard manger and watched how I dressed salad, then made me do it again because I was treating leaves like cargo. Coat every surface, he said. Glistening, not drowning. I overcorrected. He rolled his eyes. The third time I got it, and he walked away without a word, which was basically a hug. He taught me the past isn't a stage, it's a courtroom. Plates deserve cross-examination before they go out. Are you hot? Are you seasoned? Are you correct? Are you necessary? He taught me to pull dishes when ingredients weren't perfect. He sent me to the farmer's market with $50 and told me to come back with something we could turn into a special. I came back with spring onions and shame. You're not wrong, he said, and we made an onion tart with goat cheese and honeyed vinegar that sold out in an hour. Work ate most of my life, but in a way that felt like I was eating it back. I miss birthdays and football games. I stopped trying to explain my schedule to people with weekends. My body adapted to a world where dinner happens at 11 p.m., and your big meal is staff meal at 4. I learned how to live with little burns and big sleep debt. The kitchen became the place where my anxieties made sense because they had jobs: sharpen, season, sear, send. Anxiety with tasks is just adrenaline. At some point, the word chef stopped feeling like a costume I was trying on and started feeling like a job I could do without asking permission. I didn't need my parents' approval to make it true, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't still want it in a ghostly, childish way. Childhood is loud and sticky. It leaves fingerprints you find on your face when you're tired. The opportunity came faster than I was ready for. A developer was converting an old print shop into a restaurant and courting a chef owner with a resume that had magazine covers stamped on it. He needed a suit to help open. I walked the empty floor with him, concrete dust in the air, and we talked about lines like we were plotting a heist, Grill here, cold station there, the pass a long altar between the worlds. He asked me what I cooked when no one was watching. Rice with a fried egg and too much chili oil, I said. Toast with anchovy butter. Chicken thighs. He nodded like I'd passed the test I didn't know I was taking. Opening is chaos with invoices. There's a vision, and then there's the fact that the salamander is backordered and the sink is 3 inches too far from the prep table. We argued about the menu like we were dating it. He wanted a burger because it pays rent. I didn't, because I'd seen burgers eat menus. We put it on. He was right. We designed a roast chicken that felt like a handshake, dried brined, air-dried, roasted hot, basted with butter, finished with lemon, and just so glossy it could see itself. We built a charred cabbage with sunflower tahini that made people talk to their phones. We decided to put anchovies on the Caesar and refused to apologize. Opening week was a sprint through a minefield. The printer jammed. A busser dropped a tray and the crash felt personal. We sent a medium steak medium well because a new cook panicked and I wanted to chew him out and didn't, because teaching on a Friday isn't education, it's triage. A blogger took photos like he was collecting evidence. The bar ran out of the good gin, and we had a fight about whether to 86 the Negroni or pretend the other gin was interesting. I went home vibrating and stared at the ceiling like it might evolve into a plan. Then the kitchen found its cadence. We were a band that had rehearsed enough to not look like we were trying. The ticket rails sang. The wrinkled mushroom guy started saving me the weirdest morels. Our fish came in like jewelry. Guests said things like, "I haven't tasted tomatoes like this since my grandmother's garden," which is both untrue and exactly the kind of lie food is for. A reviewer called me restrained, which made me laugh because I had yelled, "Stop touching the scallops!" loud enough to make the bartender duck the night before. Still, we were doing it. The room hummed. The money wasn't awful. The bruises made sense. 1 month in, the chef owner said he was being pulled to a second project and slid me a contract across a sticky desk. Head chef. My name embroidered on a jacket and on the menu. I said okay. Like a person caught off guard by the thing he'd been aiming at forever. I didn't cry. Kitchen sand that response down. But I allowed myself a moment alone on the line, hand on the pass, the room empty, and let the quiet sink in as proof. Running the kitchen meant everything and nothing changed. I still had to order lemons and arguments. I still had to tell a 19-year-old to refire a steak without making him love food less. I had to remember birthdays and parole meetings and who needed a push and who needed a stop. I had to be the person who would throw a plate back and also the person who would apologize to a server for throwing it near her. It's a lot of hats and one apron. I started to feel like I lived in the space between heat and dining room light. I was exactly where I wanted to be when the host walked to the pass, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and said, 2-4 last name. Window, please. My last name. Said into my kitchen like someone had called a ghost by its true name. What? I asked too loud. She repeated it casual, unaware. The last name S, regulars? They asked for a window. I looked up and the room sharpened and blurred at once. My parents, in my dining room, in good clothes, sitting down at a two-top we reserve for anniversaries. They didn't see me. I saw everything, the way my mom still holds her purse like a shield, the way my dad's shoulder drops when a server hands him a menu. I put a hand flat on the pass like it could hold me upright. Chef? My grill cook said, like nothing strange was happening. We're in the weeds. We're fine. I said, because saying it is sometimes the only way to make it true. We got busy enough that our bar manager started calling us the city's dining room. It was a joke that landed because it felt a little true. Birthdays, job offers, breakups, makeups, bad dates that turned into good marriages, it all passed through the room while I made sure the chicken skin blistered right and the salad leaves shone without wilting. I started recognizing regulars like characters in a show. The guy who always asked for extra olives and then left half of them. The woman who came alone, ordered the charred cabbage, and read a book, smiling at sentences. The couple who argued about dessert until I sent them both and watched them stop arguing. I like knowing the beats. It made me feel like I lived in a story with chapters longer than a shift. And then there they were. My parents. The last name S. The word that used to feel like a lid suddenly turned into a ticket. I kept moving because movement is the only thing that keeps panic from becoming a problem in a kitchen. Table 12, I said. Fire their salad. Dress it right. Anchovy optional. I didn't comp them. I didn't send out fireworks. I told the server to treat them like everyone else. No special language, I said, and she said, I never do. In a way that made me proud of the culture we built. We sent the salad properly dressed. We sent bread that mattered. We sent the roast chicken with just like a memory and a wedge of lemon I told the server to squeeze at the table without making it a show. I watched from the past like a creep. My mom closed her eyes on the first bite of chicken and did the tiny nod that had been my private scoreboard since I was 10. My dad tore bread into sauce like he always has when he's pleased and pretending not to be. He asked the server how we got the skin like that. Dry brine, she said, and we air dry the birds. He nodded, satisfied, like he'd been let in on a secret instead of fed the answer we give to anyone who asks. They came again. A Thursday, then a Sunday, then another midweek when I was sure they were testing the place to see if it was consistent. They ordered like people who ate together a lot. Split a salad. He got steak medium rare and actually meant it. She tried the cabbage, wrinkled her nose, then cleaned the plate. They argued lightly about dessert, and in a twist that made me dizzy, agreed to share the panna cotta, my least personal dessert because pastry is math and I'm a feelings cook. They were happy. Or they looked full, which is a cousin. I started doing tiny things I could defend as hospitality and not performance. An amuse of anchovy butter on toast, lemon zest and chives, because if I could make my mother like anchovies then maybe the future was less fixed than childhood suggested. She made a face at the word and then made a different face at the taste. Oh, she said, small, genuine. The server said, sometimes you just needed it made right. Which is my line, and I rolled my eyes and felt warm. In the walk-in, I leaned my head against the shelf and let the cold make my skin remember I was a body and not just a job. I don't know what I wanted from this. Apology? Probably not. Apologies are often just requests to be forgiven for free. Hugs? We're not a hugging family. Maybe I wanted them to taste it. Not the chicken. Us. Me. The thing I did with the thing they thought was stupid. My staff knew enough to leave me alone about it. I told them the facts. They're my parents. Please don't say anything. The manager asked if we should comp. No, I said. Treat them like anyone. He nodded, like he understood the balance I was trying to hold between pettiness and pride. They kept coming. They became the couple our host recognized. Window? She'd ask, and they'd say yes and sit and order and talk about their neighbor's new car or a show they were pretending they didn't like. Once, my mom said, food tastes like food here. And my dad said, not too salty. And I felt my teenage self unclench a little. I don't think they were avoiding the kitchen. I think they just didn't see me in the blur. The lights make you anonymous if you stay behind them. I could have walked out any night and said, hi. I didn't. Not out of spite. More like practice. I wanted them to enjoy the food separate from the story. I wanted to be sure I wasn't using strangers as an audience for a family scene I hadn't rehearsed. One Wednesday, the room was soft, midweek hum, the kind of night where you can hear forks hit plates but still breathe. They were at the window. They split a salad. They ordered the chicken because of course. I tasted their just like it was a test. I plated their dish like I was sending myself out. I told the server to drop the check to the table instead of the edge because my dad has always grabbed it like it's his job. I took the presenter from her at the pass and pulled a pen from behind my ear. The paper at the top, the little space where I scribble, thank you, for regulars and draw smiley faces when I'm in a good mood, looked like a stage and I hated that feeling. I don't perform. I cook. I wrote anyway, slowly, because my hands were steady and I wanted to notice, with love, your son. The words looked simple and too much. I closed the presenter. I held it for a beat like it was hot. Then I walked into the dining room. Dining rooms aren't quiet, they're layered. Silverware, whisper, a shake tin, laughter that spikes and falls. But when you step out of the kitchen, your body thinks you've crossed a border. The heat behind you turns into light in front. You feel your jacket on your shoulders like armor and spotlight. You're suddenly terribly aware of your hands. My parents were the way people are when they're happy without planning to be. My dad was telling a story about a neighbor's lawn with the tone of a man narrating the weather. My mom was correcting him on the tree species because details have always been her sport. The panna cotta sat between them like a truce flag. If I'd been the server, I'd have refilled their water and left. As the chef's son, I stood there with a checkbook and a heartbeat. "Thank you for dining with us," I said, the line I use when I'm dropping a dessert on an anniversary or a chef's tasting on someone who didn't order it but looks like they need it. My voice didn't wobble. I set the presenter down in front of my dad because he has never not taken the bill. Habit is its own language. "Thanks, boss," he said, the way people say it to anyone in a white jacket who looks like they're in charge. I nodded and stepped back to give the moment room. I turned my body to leave because this wasn't a stage show. It was a meal. But I lingered, folding myself into the corner of their awareness the way I do when I want to clock a reaction to a dish. He opened the presenter with the little flick he's always done, thumb under, a half-second check to see if he's about to be mad. His eyes landed on the ink. He squinted like the words might rearrange. He read it again. He didn't breathe for a beat. "What is?" He started and stopped. He turned the book so my mom could see. She read it and put her fingers to her mouth, not dramatic, just a catch. She looked up at me like she was seeing two things at once. The kid who made her mushrooms right once and the man who ran the room she'd been bragging about to her friends. I didn't say, "It's me." I didn't say, "See?" I didn't say, "I told you." I stood in my jacket with a grease shadow on the sleeve that never fully leaves and waited, because silence in a dining room is a choice you make for someone else too. You're the chef?" my dad asked. Not disbelieving. Just recalibrating. "I run the kitchen," I said. "We built it together, a team. The menu's mine." My mom's eyes watered and she's not a crier. "This is your place?" she asked, looking around like the walls might offer a footnote. "I cook here," I said. "Every night." My dad closed the presenter, opened it, closed it again like it might present a new option if he toggled it enough. He rubbed his thumb against his forefinger in that old habit like he was measuring a pinch. It's not stupid," he said, quiet, like the volume dial had snapped off inside him. The word didn't knock me over. It loosened something. I had imagined it might taste like victory, like a champagne pop. It tasted like unscrewing a jar that had always been too tight and finding it opens with normal human hands. My mother reached across the table like she might take my hand but stopped halfway, asking permission with her eyes. I let her take it. Her fingers were cool from holding her water glass. "We didn't," she started, then swallowed the apology like it might choke her. "Thank you for the meal," she said instead, which in our family is how you say a lot of things. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I'm glad you like the chicken." My server appeared with 2 small glasses of dessert wine because she is unflappable and more attuned to pathos than she pretends. "A little something from the kitchen," she said, set them down like grace, and disappeared. We didn't do a movie scene. No speech, no breakdown, no newly rewritten past. My dad slid his card into the sleeve with his name on it, the one that is also my name, gold letters catching candlelight. He pushed it forward, then tugged it back like a fish testing a line. "Do you still make that lemon chicken?" he asked, tentative, like stepping onto a pond in winter. "Something like it," I said. "Better now." He nodded at that, a private agreement with himself that the world is allowed to change. My mom said they'd been telling everyone about this place. And it was funny and perfect that she hadn't known what this place meant to me until right then. I signed the slip. I didn't comp. I didn't discount. The point wasn't money. The point was the exchange. They stood, and for a second we were a family standing in a public room pretending a decision hadn't just been made. We would keep being in each other's lives, but differently. No ceremony. Just the knowledge you can find each other now. See you soon? My mom asked. A question and an offering. You know where to find me, I said, because for the first time, they did. They left. They turned at the door, like everyone does, to let the room wash over them one more time. My dad lifted his hand as if to wave, and then used it to hold the door for the couple behind them. They stepped into the city like it had been their plan all along. I went back to the past because service doesn't wait for anyone's narrative arc. The heat grabbed me like a friend. 2 chickens, 1 steak mid, 1 cabbage, my Sue called. Heard, I answered, and squeezed lemon on a plate with a steadier hand than I'd had a minute before. We cleaned down the way kitchens do when the room is finally ours. Music turned up, towels turned gray, jokes uglier and softer at the same time. My Sue slid me a beer without looking like he was doing me a favor. You good? He asked. Same words he'd used a dozen times, different weight. I am, I said, surprised by the steadiness. Not elated. Not devastated. Just aligned. After service, I stood at the pass and looked at the dining room the way people look at their sleeping kids. Chairs inverted on tables, candles pinched out, a smell of smoke and citrus that never fully leaves the wood. The window gave me my reflection, older than the last time I took stock, younger than I'll be when this story gets boring to tell. I thought about the note on the bill. How small it was. How big it felt anyway. How restraint isn't a moral stance so much as a recipe, sometimes the only way to get the thing you actually want out of the ingredients you have. My parents booked table 12 again the next week. The host didn't flinch when she said our name out loud. Window for the last name S. Like it had always been that way. They came, they ate, they didn't try to fix the past with utensils. We didn't have a summit about childhood. We had chicken and salad and a panna cotta that set a little softer because the oven ran hot, and I decided to let it slide. After, my mom asked if she could see the kitchen. I said yes and brought them to the threshold because that's the right place to let civilians stand. My dad looked at the line like he was inspecting a car, the grill throwing heat, the station labels, the tickets like prayer flags. He said, "It's a lot," which is the most accurate thing he's ever said about my work. It is, I said. And I love it. We didn't hug. We didn't say, "I'm proud of you," or "I'm sorry." We didn't have to. That's not a Hallmark ending. It's a real one. Dignity, proximity, repetition. They came back. We fed them. They told their friends. Sometimes they brought those friends and I watched my father explain the menu to someone the way I would, and I didn't feel robbed. I felt passed through. Like a story had learned how to tell itself without me pushing. People think revenge is hot. Mine was warm. It was butter basting a bird until the skin sings. It was salt early and lemon late. It was me, in a white jacket, writing a note in my own handwriting on a bill that said, "This is who I became when you weren't looking," and I made something you can't call stupid with a straight face. It didn't punish. It didn't humiliate. It didn't even win in the way wins like to be photographed. It just fed the situation until it wasn't hungry anymore. Every night, when I sharpened my knife before service, I remember the instructor who said, "Discipline lets you be kind later." That night was my later. The discipline was years of doing the unsexy parts and not quitting when the kitchen felt like a machine designed to turn me into steam. The kindness was handing a bill to a man who taught me to finish sentences by turning up the TV and writing 4 words that turned the volume back down. If there's a lesson, I know, this isn't r/ELI 5, it's simple. Add what's missing, not more of what you already have. My life didn't need more anger. It needed taste, repetition, people who say, heard, and mean, "I've got you." It needed the humility to make a burger even when you want to be the person who never has to. It needed lemon, every time I thought I could get away without it. I'm not curing anything with a roast chicken. I'm not solving every old sentence in a family that didn't have the right words for love. But I am making a room where people come and sit and are fed, and sometimes the people are the ones who told me the thing I loved was dumb. And sometimes they take a bite and close their eyes and nod without meaning to, and that nod says more than an apology ever could. Last week, my dad asked for a recommendation for his buddy's anniversary dinner. Here, I said, because marketing is part of the job and because that was the point all along. He laughed, shook his head, and said, I walked into that one. He booked anyway. They split a salad. They asked for the window. The host didn't flinch when she said our name. On busy nights, I still keep a lemon in my jacket pocket. It's a superstition now as much as a tool. When a dish needs to wake up, I cut it, squeeze, and watch everything come into focus. That's what the note on the bill felt like, an end-of-service squeeze. Not enough to make anything pucker. Just enough to make the whole thing finally taste like itself. If you've read this far, thanks for letting a stranger talk about onions and fathers and rooms full of heat. I know this isn't the dramatic revenge post some people come here for. But that's okay. The sweetest revenge isn't a slam. It's a plate that leaves the past hot and correct and shuts up a word that never belonged to you. It's living your thing so stubbornly well that even the people who called it stupid have to put down their forks, look up, and admit, if only to themselves, that it isn't. It never was.